Lament psalms are useful in worship. They so truly are. It's perhaps something that the church in our day, truthfully, perhaps for a long time, has just underappreciated. I don't know of anyone who is writing contemporary songs, for example, for use in worship. I don't know how many of them are actually using or writing laments. How many of them are composing laments nowadays? It's something that's sort of lost, something that's underappreciated. I mean, imagine if you have people who come into a place of worship and they feel a bit battered up. They've had a rough week, and they come to a worship that's just filled with songs that are very happy and uplifting. There's sort of an experiential kind of dissonance here in terms of the worship and where they are at that moment in their lives. But imagine for a moment if you didn't do that. Imagine that we offered up for them a lament, a sad song. Imagine what that could do. They can come into a place of worship and not have to adjust their thinking. They don't have to wield some type of a will to worship. They can come into a place of worship and they're given a song that kind of gives words to the grief that they're feeling, to the sorrow that they are lamenting over. And it allows them to still be able to worship. You see, we tend to try to encourage people to say, you know, you don't need to get your life in order to come to worship. But how many of us really believe that? You see, it's not really expressed in our liturgy. It's not really expressed in the way that we order our songs. But imagine if you did. Imagine that you gave to them a lament that allows them to kind of put their teeth into this thing and allow them now to worship in their grief, in their sorrow. You see the power of what that can do. It is inviting them to worship. It's telling them that it's okay that you're not okay. It's telling them that you really don't need to have your life in order to come and worship God holistically, accurately, wholeheartedly. It tells them that the Lord still loves you and cares for you, cares enough for you to give to you a song like this so that you can still worship. Now let's be clear, I don't want people to stay in lament. I want people to be able to rejoice. But if you draw them in, give them a song that they can mourn with, where they are joining with other people like them that is in grief, to remember that we actually worship a God who knows sorrow, a God who knew pain, a God who knew lament and trials. But to now in that worship, through the preaching of the word, through the sacraments, to be able to lead them now into to an experience of praise, to remember who it is that they worship, the hope that they have in Jesus Christ. You see, they can go from lament to praise. They can go from suffering to glory. And it's only, you could see, by faith in the preached Christ. And in that sense, you could see that people's experience of worship from suffering to glory, from lament to praise, is really tracking the life course of Jesus Christ himself, because that's exactly the life of Christ. It is going from suffering to glory, from lament to praise. You see, the use of laments in worship can be such a ministry to God's people who are really sorrowing from day to day. And this is the reason why it is so important that we preach Christ in our worship and emphasize the centrality of Christ in our preaching, because it is Jesus who knew suffering that goes to glory. And if we preach Christ, we are in bringing him to a people who also can experience suffering to glory, fellowshipping with Christ in his suffering and fellowshipping with Christ in his glory.